Hello and welcome to episode number 398. This is the Project Management Podcast at pm-podcast.com and I'm Cornelius Fichtner. Every project that you and I have ever and will ever manage depends on people's skills. The sponsor relies on you as the project manager to successfully lead the team. You rely on the team to have what it takes to create all the deliverables at the required quality. And the end user, the recipient of what you and the team will deliver, well, they must have the skills to use that product that you're finally going to give to them. If you are a project manager who wants to become PMP or PMI ACP certified, then the easiest way to do so is with our sister podcasts, the PM Prepcast or the Agile Prepcast, and study for the exam by watching the in-depth exam prep video training from pmprepcast.com. But what if the skills don't match up to the task at hand? What if a team member is lacking a skill? What if the technology is so new and different that your end users will have a hard time with it? The answer is, of course, coaching, mentoring, and training. And there is no one better than Suzanne Madsen, who coaches and mentors project managers into project leaders, to come on the program and help us understand these three similar yet different activities. And so, let us get going with our training on coaching, mentoring, and training. Enjoy the interview.
The Project Management Podcasts feature interview.
Today with Suzanne Madsen, project leadership coach, author, and speaker.
Hello, Suzanne. Good afternoon.
Hello, Cornelius. Good morning.
Yes, we have just determined we seem to be living in an alternate universe. While it's 9 degrees centigrade here in California, it's like 13 degrees in London. I'm moving. It's warmer where you are.
Yeah, it's really good because it doesn't happen that often for us.
Yeah, to begin, let's review each of the terms, a quick definition as it relates to projects. So, what is coaching?
So coaching, there's many different ways of describing it, but I think for the listeners, it's useful to think of it as a technique that we can use outside a project or inside a project to facilitate learning and reflection through questions. That sentence is really important, to facilitate learning and reflection through questions. So it means that we ask those questions in a way that empowers a team member to find his or her own answers. Again, that's very, very important because coaching is not about giving advice. And it doesn't involve the coach telling people what to do or how to do it. That's a big misconception. So when we coach someone, we really assume that they have the answers to the problems themselves. We, as coaches, just really need to empower them and help them to find those answers. So I think that really in a nutshell is what it is.
Mm-hmm. And then what is mentoring?
So mentoring is, again, a technique which allows the team member to learn from a master, so someone who has more experience than themselves. So in mentoring, we receive guidance and support and advice from a senior expert. And notice here the difference, the word advice comes in. So in mentoring, we do give advice because it's from someone who's been there and done it and who can assist team members and junior project managers and show them how to do it. So it's more hands-on than coaching.
And of course, then also, how does training differ from both of these?
Yes, so of course there are overlaps between all of these terms, and there is quite a lot of overlap between mentoring and coaching. But I think training is a little bit different again, because training really is more based on a standard curriculum. So I would say that training is a technique that allows a team member to acquire knowledge, skills, and theory from more of a standard curriculum, where coaching and mentoring is more tailored. So that means that training is more skills-based. It's more like we transfer skills. It's more theoretical and less tailored to the individual than coaching and mentoring is.
Yeah, it's pretty much what we're doing with this interview here, right?
Which one of them?
This one right now, the training.
Yeah, so we're giving knowledge, but we're not telling people how to implement it longer term. That's right.
Okay. And where do motivational techniques fit into all of this?
So, yeah, I was thinking about that. Because it's a little bit of a parallel track, really. But it is related, but I would say as a parallel track, because you can use both mentoring, coaching, and training as a way to motivate someone. In that sense, all of these, coaching, mentoring, and training, could be used as a motivational technique. For instance, if we allow a team member to train in PMP, that could be very, very motivating if that's what they really want to do. Or it could be demotivating, for instance, if you ask people on your team to go to a sales training course. They would go, well, why do I want that? So in that sense, it definitely has the power to motivate. But there are also another angle, because there are lots of motivation techniques that sit outside of training, mentoring, and coaching. For instance, we might say, what is a motivational technique in the first place? And I'd say that it's when we use a technique that helps a person to unlock their passion and enthusiasm for their job. So when we do something that allows people to increase their enthusiasm, that's really motivating. So other techniques than coaching, mentoring, and training could be praising someone. When you praise someone for a job well done, it means that they feel good about their job and they feel that they're needed for the job. Or if I give someone an exciting new task to do that really develops them and stretches them and plays to their strengths, again, those actions will help the person to deepen their passion and enthusiasm for the work. So in summary, motivation techniques can be training, coaching, and mentoring in itself, or it can be additional techniques, as long as they help us to increase a person's passion and enthusiasm for their job.
Excellent. Thank you. So what we want to do now is we want to look at coaching, mentoring, and training in more detail, especially how it relates to project management. And to do that, I have prepared a series of questions for you for each of these. It's actually the same set of questions. We're going to run through them for coaching, mentoring, and training. Here we go with coaching. So what are the 3 things that a project manager must know about coaching?
So firstly, I would say that coaching is not about giving advice. And I think that's a big misconception. Mentoring is more about that, but not coaching. It is really about asking questions and helping a person to find their own answers, because that's much more empowering. Secondly, coaching can be formal or it can be informal. So I'm a qualified coach, and that means that I oftentimes coach people on a very formal way. We set an hour aside where I help someone with a particular aspect of their job. And on a project, we can do the same thing. We can coach formally, set an hour aside, go into a meeting room with someone on your team, and help them through a situation, for instance, where they would like to get better at interfacing with a client. That's very formal. Or we can coach informally, which means that we coach on the fly. As we're having conversations with team members, instead of giving advice, we ask insightful questions and get them to think for themselves. For instance, if someone comes up to you and asks you, how do you want me to do this? How do you think I should do that? It is so easy for us just to tell them what to do. But instead we turn it around and we say, well, what would you like to achieve? Or what might happen if you do so and so? We ask questions instead of just giving advice. And number 3, I really say that to call ourselves a coach and to say that we're coaching, I would really say that we need some kind of qualification. We can't qualify I don't know of any qualifications in mentoring, but there are qualifications in training, because there is a method, there is a coaching method. And I would actually encourage the listeners here to, why not go and get a coaching qualification? It doesn't have to be, 6 months. You have actually also short courses on it. If we engage in such learning about being a coach, we are likely to develop our listening skills and our rapport building skills, which either way are great assets when we are project managers.
Mm-hmm. When is it appropriate to use coaching on our projects?
Well, it is very appropriate to use when we are in front of a person on a team who is very capable of finding the answers for him or herself, but we just need to help them uncover it. So, for instance, in situations where the team member is quite skilled, they have the knowledge, but maybe they need to strengthen their level of motivation. Maybe they're not so driven at the moment. Or they need to find clarity in a certain situation. So it's not about the skill, it's not about the knowledge, it's about clarity. Or if you want to help someone to step up and strengthen their leadership skills, interpersonal skills, because these are situations where it's not just about knowledge, it's more about how we look at it. And as a coach, you can help someone to gain insight into those situations. So they're great situations for coaching.
Mm. Do you have an example for us regarding when and how to best use coaching in a project setting?
Let's take an example. Let's say a technically competent team member who knows their stuff really well, they know the technicalities, and they come up to you and they are preparing for a meeting with a client. And this person is asking you, how should I do this presentation? How should I do this client presentation? And it would be so easy for us to just go and say, you know what, I would do X, Y, Z. Why don't you do that? But instead, in this example, in a coaching mode, we would go, okay, what would you like to achieve with the presentation? Who is the audience? What would you like them to do as a result of having listened to your presentation? How much interaction do you think it's important to have with your audience? And so we guide them through asking a number of questions here. We guide them to find the answers, because this is not about actually having the technical understanding. It's really about making them think about what they're trying to achieve with the presentation.
And when should we not use coaching on a project?
So we should be cautious about using coaching when we are in front of a more junior person, someone who's new in a role, who doesn't really have the knowledge. So you've got someone who is new, and just imagine it would be very frustrating for them if you go up and ask them, what are you trying to achieve? And what do you think? How do you think the client will react to this? They don't know because they're new. So it would be inappropriate to ask them too many questions.
And what's the number one mistake that we project managers make when it comes to coaching?
I think that the number one mistake is that we try to solve a problem. We all love to be problem solvers because it makes us feel good, it makes us feel wanted and needed. But solving the problem and giving someone the answer just isn't always the right thing to do, because it doesn't make people think for themselves. It is less empowering. And if I may, I would add a second mistake. And the second mistake is that we just don't listen enough. We think that we're coaching someone, we think we're there trying to help someone else out, but what's happening is that we're listening to our own internal dialogue. Listening is super important for coaching.
How have you personally used coaching in a project setting?
So, because Cornelius, I'm a qualified coach, I've actually used coaching quite formally, also informally, but I think it's worthwhile mentioning here how we can use formal coaching. So I have set on my projects, I've set time aside for coaching sessions with different types of people on my projects. And in these situations, there have been people who knew they were getting coached by me and they wanted it. So for instance, I've been coaching some very high potential people who really wanted to progress and who were ready to learn. And we met and we set aside between 1 hour and 1.5 hours every 3 or 4 weeks. We would book a meeting room and I would coach her through, where she wanted to go on the project and in her role, etc. But I've also coached formerly underperformers, actually people who had been put on an improvement plan by human resources. So this was a question of someone who was had a track record of underperformance. And the same way, we were scheduling regular meetings and I was helping this person, guiding this person through what their strengths were, how we could really grow them in the project context.
What motivational techniques go alongside with coaching?
Yeah, I would mention a couple here. The first one I would mention is goal setting. So when we coach someone, it's very important that we look at the goals. What is it that we're trying to achieve, or what's the problem we're trying to resolve? We need to understand what we're moving towards. And that's actually very motivating. It's a motivation technique to understand where we're going, and it's positive for someone that someone of us are motivated towards something new. We all have an intrinsic need to grow and to develop. So that is definitely appropriate. And in many corporate environments, we also have personal development plans. If not the more frequently, we do them once a year. What are we going to do next year to develop this person? And goal setting is also part of that. We do a gap analysis. Where are you today? Where do you want to go? And an action plan for moving a person forward. That is very closely linked with coaching. And what I would also highlight is that allowing someone to work autonomously is also a motivational technique that kind of goes alongside coaching, because it's very empowering and motivating for a person if they're able to work without too much supervision. That, of course, again, assumes that they are relatively capable and skilled at what they're doing, which is what we're assuming when we're coaching someone in the first place. So helping someone to work autonomously, helping break down their work so that they can get on with it without too much supervision and work autonomously is definitely an important motivational technique.
Excellent. That's it for coaching. We're now going to do exactly the same thing for mentoring. So, my first question for you. What are the 3 things that a project manager must know about mentoring?
So when we move into mentoring, and I've just been going on about how important it is not to give too much advice in coaching, but in mentoring, I would say the first item is that as a mentor, we do give advice, and we do give advice based on our own experiences. And that also means that we need to choose our mentors very well, because they're basically looking in their own experience, everything they've learned over their career, and they're talking to you on that basis. Secondly, I would say that we need to know and understand that a mentor is often someone more senior from within the same organization. It could be from another team, or it could be from within the same team. That doesn't really matter, but it is someone who's been there, done it, and who has more experience, and who's happy to share that. Thirdly, this is something that maybe we haven't thought about, but being a mentor can be very, very motivating, because it's a great way to help a person to actually step up and take on more responsibility. Because when we mentor someone else, we almost go in and help to take responsibility for someone else's development. I mean, okay, we're not fully responsible. The person we're mentoring is responsible, but we're still having that kind of, we're guiding someone else. And it means that we step up and we think about, how am I coming across as a role model? So it can be very, very motivating for the person who is a mentor.
When is it appropriate to use mentoring on a project?
I would say that if we have a team member who would like to learn about some insider secrets from someone in a similar job role, then it can be great to pair that person up with a mentor from the same team or from another team who can give them those insider secrets. Or if someone on the team would like to get inspired by someone more senior, maybe they're getting a bit stuck in their role, but they like it, but they need some new inspiration. It could be great to pair them up with a mentor from a different part of the business, so that they can see a different point of view, learn from someone more experienced. Yeah, that can be very, very motivating. And I'm also thinking oftentimes in projects we have, we do lessons learned at the end of a project. But those lessons learned sometimes end up in a report, and they're not really disseminated. No one really looks at them. If we have a lot of mentors across the organization, it can be a great way to actually share our knowledge and break down silos in a different way. So they're all situations that are great, in which we can use mentoring with great advantage.
Mm-hmm. Do you have an example for us regarding when and how to best use mentoring on a project?
Yeah, so I would say, let's imagine that a junior project manager or someone who is more in a project support role joins a team. I think it would be an ideal opportunity to use mentoring, where the senior project manager takes this junior project manager or project support person under their wing, and the junior person can shadow them, and the senior person will mentor them, show them the tricks of the trade, and bring them to meetings, etc. And another example I'll give is if we have a developer who's joined a team, and that developer, let's say, would like to learn how to run agile projects, but there may be no one with that experience within the existing team. Well, sending that person on training is one thing, but why not pair them up with a mentor from another team where they are already running agile projects? Then the person can learn and observe how to run agile on a real live project. So there are some examples for your listeners there.
Mm-hmm. And when should we not use mentoring on our projects?
I think when a person on a team is really unsure about their career path and which way they want to go and what their strengths are. And, it's not appropriate to use mentoring, because my mentor's just going to talk to me about their own experiences. And that might be not relevant. That might not be relevant to me at all. I would much rather want someone who's coaching me, who's guiding me through questions, than someone who's giving me advice.
What is the number one mistake that we project managers make when it comes to mentoring?
Yeah, you know what? This mistake I'm going to highlight, I've seen that so many times. And it's the mistake where we take on a mentoring role within an organization, and then we don't have time to fulfill it. So you have a junior person who comes to you from within your team or another team, and they say, would you like to be my mentor? Or you've been paired up with someone to mentor them. And you say yes, because you feel you have to. But then they put time in your diary, they put an hour here and they put an hour there, and you end up canceling them because your project takes priority. And it's such a shame. It really undermines the process. And of course, it undermines trust in that mentoring relationship. So if we say yes to mentoring, I think we should really follow through on it.
How have you personally used mentoring in a project?
So I have mentored junior staff because I have had the role of project manager and program manager. I've actually taken junior project managers under my wing in the example I also mentioned before. I've put that person, let's say, in this case, it actually was a mentoring agreement that lasted for years. It was a junior project manager. I was running a big program of work, and she was sitting next to me, and I was mentoring her on the fly. She came to meetings with me, and I'll gradually start to delegate work streams for her to run with. And over the years, she grew to take on more project work on her own and moved away from the support role. So that was very satisfying for both of us. And it's a great example of how we can use mentoring.
And what motivational techniques go alongside with mentoring?
So there's quite a few. The ones that I would mention here are actually delegation and providing stretch assignments, because in the example I just mentioned before, we're working with someone inside our own teams where we mentor someone more junior. And that means that we can gradually begin to stretch them and to give them more challenging work. And that is so motivating. We all need a stretch. We all need to grow. And to have someone who drip feeds us and to slowly increases the level of stretch and challenge is a great motivator. I'd also say, of course, in that scenario, the mentor needs to remain there and to support people in the process. And another example that I would like to mention here is that it is very intrinsically motivating for all of us to find variety in our jobs. That is an intrinsic need that we all have, more or less. And so by mentoring someone, by exposing someone to mentors from different departments, we can actually help increase someone's level of variety, if you like, or we can rotate people between different roles. It all gives us a bit more exposure and variety, and that in itself is a very motivating technique.
2 down, 1 to go, which means we are moving on to training. And I bet the listeners already know what the first question is that I'm going to ask you. So, Suzanne, tell us, what are the 3 things that a project manager must know about training?
Right. So for training, I would say that good training should use blended learning styles. What does that mean? It means that we shouldn't just be running through a PowerPoint. We should be mixing in theory with storytelling, with exercises, with examples, with PowerPoint, because people learn differently. Some people are more auditory, some people are more visual, some people like to do it and feel it and touch it. So that's very, very important to understand that training isn't just one mode. We can train in different modes, and we should. Secondly, I would say that we need to understand that training can be a great way to support people in reaching stretch assignments in their development plans. So, for instance, let's assume that you've agreed with a team member that they have to increase their knowledge of Agile. In that case, training can be used as a great tool to help them stretch into that and reach that goal. Finally, I would mention that training normally teaches what? It's often about theory, but it doesn't really show people how to implement. We mentioned this earlier on in the interview. So it's very, very good to combine training with either coaching or mentoring, where training goes in and gives people that theoretical grounding of what it is we're talking about. And then coaching and mentoring can help to sustain and implement that knowledge.
And when is it appropriate to use training on our projects?
I would say it's appropriate when we have someone in the team who lacks a certain skill, and when it would be quicker to send them on a standard course to gain that knowledge rather than actually going through a long, long training period with them. So, yeah, because it's almost like a trade-off. If someone joins a team and you feel actually there's some basics here that they're missing, and it's standard, so send them on a course where they will learn that. For instance, managing risks on a project. It's a standard curriculum. You can get them to go off and learn that. And then you can work with them afterwards to implement that on the project.
Do you have an example for us regarding when and how to best use training in a project setting?
Yeah, I would say the example could be that we have a new support person join the team who has never been formally trained in project management. Of course, you can mentor them and you can show them the tricks of the trade, but there will be some fundamentals that they don't know. So you can ask them to go and train, for instance, in PMP, and you can support that. Or if it's in Europe, Prince 2. But that's a great way to get them to enhance their skills. It would probably take too long if you were to go through the entire PM book through a mentoring assignment. It wouldn't be very effective use of your time. It would be much better in that case to actually get them to go and learn PMP and just take the exam.
And when should we not use training on our projects?
So I would say when someone already has the theoretical foundation and when they actually are quite experienced. So let's imagine that you have a new person who joins your team or they join your company, and things are done differently in your company than in the other company. That's just the nature of different company cultures. And so let's say we get confused. We think that they don't know the theoretical grounding, but they do know the theoretical grounding. It's just because they don't know how it's done around here. If we send that person a training course, that would be wrong. That would be a wasted effort. That will frustrate them because it will just give them the standard answers. What we need is to work with them on how to apply it in this new company context. So mentoring would be much more appropriate.
And what is the number one mistake that we project managers make when it comes to training?
I actually think it's along the lines of what I mentioned before. We're not good enough at helping people to apply the knowledge they've learned after the course. So we go on the course and we learn the theory, but how do we integrate it afterwards? That's a big mistake. We can do that. We can help people integrate that knowledge by asking them to relay it to people in the team. One thing is to learn, another thing is to teach. So if you ask people to relay what they've learned, to maybe conduct a lunch and learn session, then it will help them to implement it. And also give people opportunities to run with a project if they've just been on a project management course. That would be a good one, so that we actually give people the opportunities to implement what they've just been on a course to learn about.
And how have you personally used training on one of your projects?
I would say I've mostly used it to send people on project management training, such as Prince 2 and PMP. In my field, that's been the way I've most often used training. We've also had soft skills. I've also sent people on soft skills training, but it's been difficult to have it stand alone. Soft skills training is an odd one. You really need to supplement it afterwards with more coaching and mentoring, because it's not a hard skill, is it? It's a soft skill. So that's an example where we really need to combine it with other forms of intervention as well.
Mm-hmm. And now for the third and final time, motivational techniques. What motivational techniques go alongside with training?
Yeah, I would say introducing people to different knowledge areas, because we go on training to learn new knowledge. So when you rotate people, that you will expose them to new areas, and that can be very, very motivating. I think I mentioned it before, we all have this intrinsic need for variety. I would also say conducting lunch and learn sessions where people connect with each other and they share knowledge. They're all motivation techniques that go alongside, and creating good development plans. Because when we ask an employee, what's in store for you next year? What do we see for you next year? Well, how would we like you to develop? Training can be a key aspect in helping them to reach those new targets. If let's say we want them to become better project managers, well, Prince 2 could be, or PMP could be, one of the aspects we would like them to train on. And so that development plan is definitely part of a motivational technique that can be used here if done correctly. When development plans are used incorrectly, it's just ticking boxes. But if we use it as a real development tool that's done collaboratively, it has real motivational value.
Now that we know a lot more about coaching, mentoring, and training, let's just make one thing absolutely clear here. It's not that one of these is better than the other for a project setting, right?
Exactly. Hopefully it's been clear from what we've been going through that different coaching, mentoring, and training should be used in different circumstances. So it's all about adapting it to the situation. None of them are better than the other. Training is best when it's about knowledge transfer, about skills augmentation, about a standard curriculum. where coaching and mentoring is much better when it comes to implementing that knowledge. So it's really good to actually combine them and use several of them at the same time, simultaneously.
At what point do we project managers have to work together with the human resources department of our company when it comes to coaching, mentoring, and training?
Yeah, I think there are a number of scenarios where it's really a good idea to work closely with human resources. And of course, it depends on the remit because different HR departments will have different remits. But let's look at some examples. For instance, some HR or human resources departments actually have coaches available. Some human resources professionals double up as coaches. They've been trained. And that means that if you have a situation inside your team where someone is having difficulties, they experience interpersonal conflict or low motivation, someone from HR might be equipped to come and help you out on your project. So that's one scenario. Another scenario is where human resources actually organize mentoring programs across the organization. So it might be that people put themselves forward to be mentored or to be a mentor, and human resources will mix and match, and it means you get assigned as a mentor or mentee to someone in a different department. So that's definitely very, very important to check in with the human resources department to find out if they have such a facility. Thirdly, I would say that sometimes human resources departments actually administer the training curriculums. So they might be in control of the standard courses that are out there, who can book what. Maybe certain employees only have access to a certain amount of training per year. So that's another good way to actually liaise with those human resources professionals. And fourthly, I would mention that human resources is often a part of the hiring process. So if you get a new candidate come in who is applying for a role within your project teams, human resources might be part of actually assessing that person and also recommending how they develop going forward, what gaps there might be in their knowledge. So I think these are four very different scenarios in which we might want to liaise with HR.
Let's take a moment and focus on motivational techniques on their own, because so far we've looked at motivational techniques as they relate to coaching, mentoring, and training, but they can also be used in other situations. And I have a couple of situations here for you. First, how do we use motivational techniques during project execution in order to keep the team motivated and going?
Yeah, I'm really pleased you're asking that question because that's obviously a major part of it. We can obviously use coaching, mentoring, and training as we've been talking about, but beyond that, there are a whole host of other techniques. So, for instance, people like to be motivated by being part of a team, or rather, it is very motivating for people to be part of a team. It's also very motivating to know that that team has a clear purpose, and that's something that we need to work with throughout the project. So, for instance, we all have an intrinsic need for feeling connected with the team and feeling that we belong in the team. And that is something that the project manager needs to work with on an ongoing basis to make sure that the motivation levels are kept up. For instance, by making sure that we plan collaboratively. That's a way that we can feel connected. For instance, by socializing outside of work, doing team building. They're all activities that make sure that we connect and that we feel we're part of a team, that we feel that we belong. Regarding the purpose, as I said before, most people feel motivated by knowing that the project has a clear purpose because we all like to contribute. We all like to feel that what we're doing adds value and has a bigger purpose. So in order for that to happen, the project manager can work with the team to talk about why we're here. What is the bigger reason for the project? How is this project helping us to make the world a better place or to help end users do something new and cool? I think it's a motivation technique that is underused. Project managers forget to motivate the team by telling them how they're really contributing to the bigger picture. And that's a shame, really, because it's really there to be used. It should be quite easy because all projects have a purpose. And we can also, furthermore, link that project's purpose to the individual's purpose. That's very motivating. So we can try to understand what each person would like more of or less of in their job and how we can create synergies between the project's purpose and the individual's purpose. How can I make sure that you, Mr. or Mrs. team member, that you get something from this project and at the same time you serve the project? They're very, very important conversations, and they're very, very motivating conversations to have. Lastly, I would mention, because there are so many of these, and I will constrain myself and not talk about all of them, but one more here. We can praise people for work well done. Very important throughout the duration of the project, because we all have an intrinsic need for feeling recognized and feeling that we're significant and that we add value. Yeah, I think that sums it up. It doesn't sum it up, but it's certainly some of the bigger ones.
Okay. These were all focused on the team and the team members and how the team going. But how do we use motivational techniques when it comes to inspiring those who are affected by our project, but they may be reluctant to change and they give us pushback?
Yeah, that's such a good question, because it's actually often overlooked. We're so focused on our teams. And what about the end users? Well, what about them? We should definitely not forget about them. The thing about change, and you mentioning here that some of those users might be reluctant to change. Well, let's think about why they might be reluctant. What is actually happening is that these end users may be a little bit fearful about what's coming. Subconsciously, maybe they're not even aware of it, because they may feel they're going to lose something because they used to do it in this way, and now you're telling me I need to do it in another way. That makes me feel a little bit uncertain, and maybe I'm going to be no good at the new ways. So people, it's actually a natural way of reacting. We feel fearful because something's going to change. And if we are going to work with that as project managers, what we can do is we can ask into that. We can ask people how they're feeling about this. We can listen to those fears and help them to see what's in it for them, because there is always an opportunity in change. We really have to work with them to see that the new state is better than the old state. Some people say we have to create a bit of a burning platform. They're not going to jump to the new state until they see that the old state is uncomfortable. But we do have to be careful not to create too big a burning platform, because that's going to create more fear. So we shouldn't go out there and scare people off. But have a realistic conversation about what will happen if we stay now in doing things the way we're doing them today, what the opportunities are moving to the future and how they feel about that, and give them an opportunity to actually articulate it. I think that's one of the main ways to overcome that of resistance to change.
What is personally your favorite motivational techniques to use on projects, and why?
Well, so we just spent over half an hour going through how we must blend all the techniques, and you asked me for one favorite.
If you had to choose, which one would you take to a remote island?
So the politically correct answer is I would take the one that is most suited in this situation, right?
But nicely done.
Yeah, and that is the right answer, but that's not really what you're asking me. So I will answer what is not maybe so politically correct. I love praising people as the one technique that stands out for me, because we all like to know that we're good at something. We all like to know that we're being appreciated. And when you praise something and say, I really loved how you spoke to the client on that call. I think you just nailed it. It was lovely. Or I loved how you did something. It's a great way to show appreciation. And what we must do, however, when we praise, is that we must make it specific. If we just run around to people and say, oh, awesome, great job, well done, it loses its effect. It has to be used sparingly but well. And I'm a great favor. I'm in favor. It's free after all. It's great.
Very well. Here's my final question for you. There are so many coaching, mentoring, and training concepts and approaches available to us on our projects. How do we make sense of them and be informed enough in order to select the right one for each situation? For example, there is a junior or a senior, and do I need coaching? Do I need mentoring? Can you give us a few tips on how to analyze the situation and really make a good selection, the right selection?
Yeah, a couple of tips. First of all, and I think you said some of the key words there, look at how much experience a person has versus how much drive they have. Drive and motivation on one hand, and experience and skill level on the other. The more skilled and experienced someone is, the more coaching works, because they have the knowledge. So you're not telling them, you can coach them through it. the less skill they have, the more you need to do training, and mentoring sits in between. The more drive and motivation someone has, you don't need to coach them so much because they're very self-motivated. The less drive and motivation they have, you can use coaching techniques because you need to build them up. But above that, because that may still seem very, very theoretical, and actually I don't think we should overcomplicate it. And my real message here is use whatever is simple to use. If you find that you're in the situation, you're thinking, oh my God, skill level versus drive and motivation, I can't remember what you said about that. Don't worry too much about it. This is all lifelong learning. So use whatever is simple, whatever comes to mind, refine your approach over time, and follow your intuition. Don't get too overwhelmed by all the information out there. But also, you don't have to have all the answers. You can actually ask the individual. Who's to say that we need to have, that we need to know it all? When you're in a situation, in a moment, ask the person in front of you, what type of support do you need from me right now? How can I help you? What do you need? We're so good at pinning people down to taking on actions as managers. But if we just pause in that moment and say, right, what support do you need from me? I think that will help us to fill in a lot of blanks.
Thank you, Suzanne. And for our listeners who want to learn more about Suzanne and what she does, please do go to SuzanneMatson.com. Suzanne is also the author of 2 books, The Power of Project Leadership and also the Project Management Coaching Workbook. And I believe we did an interview on each of those for the Project Management Podcast, right? Which are available for free on the pm-podcast.com website. Suzanne, thank you so much for your time today. This was great.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And that was our interview about coaching, mentoring and training with Suzanne Matson. If you are a project manager who wants to become PMP or PMI ACP certified, then the easiest way to do so is with our sister podcasts, the PM Prepcast and the Agile Prepcast, and study for the exam by watching the in-depth exam prep video training from pmprepcast.com. And that's it. Thank you very much for listening. As always, you can find us on the web at pm-podcast.com. Please send your emails to info@pm-podcast.com, and when you write, please tell me where in the world you are writing from. And finally, we have this. Be careful about reading project management books. Your project may fail because of a misprint. Until next time.